I'm Eva Oh, and this is the Teakink podcast. I've been a dominatrix since 2011, and I would like to spill the tea on my life. Thank you for listening.
Would a sex worker date you? Now, the question always seems to be, do you have a partner? They're okay with your job? When I think the inverse is the real question. And I always get this from mostly the vanilla folk who are not very familiar with sex workers. And so it can be treated as a little bit of an education. because. All right, let's go through some case studies, shall we? So some case studies are like some unfortunate case studies first to show what the worst case scenario can look like. And then some case studies that can show you how my question has weight. So, for example, do you remember the episode where I talked about the celebrity that I was dating, that it was just so nasty and really didn't work out for us? But that was in season 2. But I don't think I went into this aspect of when they had gone through my computer that I had left with them. And they had found this writing that I had done on the different escapades that I have had. Escapades that I have told you by this point. And they came to me and brought my computer with them and said, I have read all these things. I think of you very differently now. And I'm like, all right, like how? It's not like I was hiding my sexuality or my explorations from you. Like you understood how I move through the world. And it wasn't necessarily even work stories. It was more like when I was dating and the sexual experiences that I was having. And the focus was kind of like, how could you go through all of these experiences? Like, it seems just like otherworldly, like essentially you're a huge slut. And it's like, and you know, like, what are you going to do with this information? Is there something that I need to be aware of right now? Or are we just going to understand that this is the case, you know? And that kind of trickled, I think, into morphing into them trying to weaponize my sexuality against me. And if you listen to that episode, you can hear about that in more detail, but I will not go into it here because that's not the point. And then there was another case with another partner of mine who realized that I had a lot of sexual experience and that I was confident in my sexual self. And about 3 months in, he said, I don't know if I can have sex with you anymore. And I thought, what? Why? And he said, it's because you have so much experience and I'm used to being the one that has the experience. And I thought, okay, so you don't want to do penetrative sex anymore. It's like, anything else? It's like, I don't know if I can move in that space with you anymore. And I mean, now in hindsight, I'm like, okay, yeah, maybe I should have moved on then. But because I come from a place where it's like, all right, this doesn't have to be sexual then, you know, it's like, this can be a companionship and then we can see what other options are available to us and that's fine. It didn't really work out for the best, that relationship, but it should have been a little bit of a highlight for me that he said to me, you are too comfortable and therefore that makes me uncomfortable. Right? I mean, I think if I care about somebody and I see that they are feeling who they are and that they are living who they are, then I'm going to be happy for them, And if it doesn't work for me, I'm going to say, that doesn't work for me and move on. But to start to let that breed an insecurity, I think that is an issue. And do you hear the way that I'm approaching things and that I'm communicating over things? I'm doing it in a way that is taking into account how they might be thinking and trying to figure out something that's going to work for us. And do you know how I got there? I got to this level of ability and communication through sex work, because we in sex work have to navigate so many different people and try to make them feel like they're understood and understand them and create an experience that is nourishing and enjoyable and fun and communicative and together, even if we don't feel like it. The skill is to make that happen. And it's a blessing and a curse, really, because I feel like I'm very good at doing that, but to the detriment of my judgment sometimes, because I can kind of gather that from so many people. I almost have lost a little bit of the judgment as to, actually, I shouldn't bother with this one, So that brings me to the question, do you deserve to date a sex worker? A sex worker, somebody whose job it is to create this nurturing, sense of love, this environment, where there's a connection and there's a satisfaction. Do you deserve to partake in that? I think is more the question. And when I get asked the question, does your partner know and they approve? It's I get where you're coming from. You're coming from a space that is society's noose around your neck, It's like saying that your sexuality should be confined, that your bodily autonomy as a woman should be controlled, and not by you. That your choice to monetize your time, your ability, your sexuality is not for you to decide. And that we should prize those who don't lean into the possibilities of what they might be in life, And that we praise those that stand within the boxes that we tell them to. I personally am uninterested in engaging with somebody in that tiny little square with their noose around their neck. But each to their own, perhaps. So would a sex worker date you? Yeah, it's been quite the journey. I definitely have changed for the better since entering this industry. It's come with its fair share of hard ass knocks. When I first started, I was an open-minded person. I was interested in my satisfaction. I could always figure out how to orgasm with whoever because I knew what worked for my body, and they were almost irrelevant, which is a great skill for being an escort. But I would move in a space of being open to experience. But that said, I still very much heavily lived in vanilla land of patriarchy rules and let the men think that this is their idea and don't draw too much attention to yourself. Otherwise, you'll be labeled as the bossy, scary girl. And that wasn't very satisfying. And I didn't know what the alternative would be. But stepping into the dungeon taught me that there's a world of men who are interested in what a woman has to say. And sometimes that is fetishized to the point where they don't actually listen. But often, actually, there is room for open ears on their behalf. And being able to create spaces where I was listened to and encouraged to take the charge, I think taught me a lot about being comfortable in my ability, in my voice, in the comfort of who I was and who I felt most at ease to be in the world. And that included with my sexuality. I think that the dungeon was very useful for that. And then as I was escorting, and as you start to do more talking with these clients, and you start to navigate also all of these personalities within the industry at such close proximity, you start to, for me, primarily two things. One, your communication skills in order to survive this go through the fucking roof. Like, I don't think I would have been able, I've always been fairly observant, but I didn't know how to translate that into moving things to get what I wanted out of it or to help people understand. And I think that practicing, doing that in session, negotiating how we're going to get to what I want, helping somebody reflect on their experience and reintegrating that into it, figuring out how to move somebody into a certain headspace by using my words and my being and pacing and care and understanding where they are and knowing when to move into something, knowing when to pull back, knowing when it might be too much. It's like there's so much high-level interaction and communication going on in service of the person who is coming to see me that I just learned how to do it at such an incredible level. And I feel like if you're ready to be honest to yourself, that dating a sex worker with this kind of skill set is going to be the most easeful experience. I think that the layers of annoyance really come in when societal pressures enter more than the individual. I think it's when you start to bow to that noose, to that tiny little square that you're in, when you start to bow to the fact that society is going, actually, no, it shouldn't be like this, when actually the question is, why are you saying that? You know? Why are you trying to confine us and trying to confine our thinking and our ability and our life? And that takes a courage that a lot of people don't have, in my opinion. So, do you deserve to date a sex worker? And would a sex worker date you? And the other thing that I think has really come forth from being a sex worker that has helped me refine my skill set as a human interacting with other humans is and are, unfortunately, that noose and that little square. And it's society saying, no, it should be like this. It should be like that. And it's like, why? You know, the fact that I suddenly entered all of these spaces and they were like, no, you shouldn't exist. No, what is this? No, how could people stand you? You know, it's like, actually, no. I feel like I have become a better communicator, a better person. I feel better about myself. I'm living a life where I feel like I'm living, you know? And a lot of the times at these dinner parties, they are not. I'd go back to season 1 and listen to the episode, Society is Ashamed. Ooh, Let me turn off that heater that I keep forgetting to turn off. But I would go back to season 1 and listen to Society is Ashamed at the dinner party for more on this particular aspect of my frustration. But I think learning about society's shortcomings has been really useful for me because it's given me an understanding of how to question our reality in order to create better and better potentials for myself and for us. And it makes me even more unafraid to create things like this podcast, to be public, to create in general from this perspective, this point of view, this identity, this job description. And so it's like it was absolute bullshit, but at the same time, it's taught me how to have an even wider mind. So to whether a sex worker would date you, let's give you a better case study, shall we? So there's 2 that I mentioned at the beginning. They had so many insecurities wrapped up, and also the people around them had all of that nagging. And so that didn't work out because the pressure of their own inability exploded into us. But a nice case study is a current partner who is receptive and patiently observant, and who has learned in his own time to trust me through how much we communicate, through the care that I am able to communicate in very many ways, and in the transparency that we have, and the way that we are able to prize our individual experiences and not let them muddy our own. And what has happened from this is, in his own words, I never thought that I could have a relationship like this, where we could communicate and where it could be so honest. And that wouldn't have happened if he wasn't quite a non-judgmental human. And it's not to say that he's just going to accept anything. He definitely has his ways of friction. But he has a mind where if you're able to communicate rationally and with care, it will be understood. And I think that he lives in a very privileged position as a cishet, tall, beautiful, white man. But it hasn't translated, thankfully, into a toxic protection of what that is. But rather, it's kind of given him space to be open, given him like an innate confidence to not need something to kowtow, to bow to societal expectation. And so far, so good. But I think that this is the question that should be asked. Yeah. And I guess something also that comes to mind is at these same dinner parties, when they ask if you have a partner and how they handle your job. Yeah. I think that a lot of the times they are focused on the fact that they believe that penetrative sex belongs in a monogamous framework. And the thing is that I guess it depends how you see that, right? If it's work, how does that translate into relationship if you are good at compartmentalizing these things personally? And if you're not having a relationship with somebody and it's work, is that a definition of monogamy also, or are you attaching the penetration to it? And if so, why are you attaching the penetration to it? And why is there so much weight put on penetration, for example? I think for me, these are more interesting questions, and they help also break down our really blunt prejudices that are really not well thought through, in my opinion. Yeah, I think a lot of these prejudices are in existence because they are useful for control and useful for maintaining certain structures that once upon a time somebody decided would be useful to control. And I think sexuality, because it can inspire such freedom, I may have spoken about this in the past, but because it can inspire such expression and freedom of expression, it is such a lovely thing to shut down on people so that they don't understand that that's possible, and therefore it's much easier to control them. So I think that that's kind of what I come to in a train of thought when it comes to why is penetration so closely aligned to creating monogamous structures, creating nuclear families, blah, 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 blah. Society is structured around this, but. Would a sex worker date you? At this point, I think I have become very picky, Like I've been valued for my time and my attention so much, so often, with very tangible things, even with money. And it's just made it so obvious to me how much my time and attention is worth. And so that has to come back in some sort of equal exchange, sometimes it's money, sometimes it's a level of attraction, sometimes it's amount of kindness. It's varying for me, but I think understanding what it is that is most important to you is going to be paramount in whether I'm going to engage with somebody else, because my skill level of relationship is pretty damn high, and my communication ability is pretty damn high, and my ability to empathize with somebody and to create like an environment that's going to be nurturing, loving, caring, titillating, whatever I feel like is pretty damn high. And so if I were to find somebody like that, I would praise the ground they walk on. And so this is what I want. And it's not easy to find, because you're not just going out saying, yeah, sure, okay, fine, to everyone. It takes time and it takes discernment for me to okay somebody. But I feel like it's brought me to a place where I have like a handful of good eggs. And friendship can also be something off of that. And I should probably do an episode about friendship, but for now, think carefully. Why? Why would a sex worker date you? Thank you for listening, and speak with you next time.